Good evening. It's 7:03. We'll call the meeting to order. All members are present with the exception of Mr. McCoy. Mr. McCoy asked me to pass along that the fact that he's unable to attend this evening's meeting due to a pre-planned surgical procedure, but not to worry. And also, he has asked me to convey a comment relative to one of the agenda items regarding the municipal bond rating at the appropriate time, which I will do at that point. We'll move to transmitting of the Treasury warrants 50, 50A, 51, and 51A. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Made and seconded. Anything further? All in favor? It's unanimous. Approval of the minutes of September 12, 2011. Do we have a motion?
Move to approve the minutes of September 12, 2011.
Second.
Made and seconded. All in favor? Unanimous. Our first agenda item this evening is with Jason Burrell, EHS Manager, Charles River Laboratories, regarding a public hearing relative to the request to amend flammable license for property located at 251 Ballardvale Street. Mr. Burrell, did I pronounce that correctly?
It's close enough.
Okay. Certainly have a seat. Good evening, Mr. Burrell, or Burrell. If you could tell us what you're here looking for, we'll open it up to the board, to the audience, to the manager, and I also see that John Brown is here as well.
Yes, my name is Jason Burrell. I'm representing Charles River Laboratories today. We are requesting an increase in volume for our flammable liquids license at our location at 251 Ballardvale Street in Wilmington, Mass.
Okay, that was short and sweet. Anything from the board? Do we have recommendations?
Any recommendations? Sure.
We do. We have a recommendation from the town clerk who indicates that this is much of this has to do with making sure that they have the correct amount of gallonage and that there is no objection. We also have from Deputy John Brown, who, as you indicated, is here today, Mr. Chairman. The application request for the storage of flammable and combustible liquids to amend the volume of the flammables to be stored at 251 Ballardvale Street has been reviewed. The fire department finds the documentation to be in order and has no regulatory issues at this time and recommends approval. From the building inspector, he's reviewed the above-mentioned application and he has no outstanding zoning or building code issues. I don't know if we need any further explanation as to what the amendment is. I think perhaps you could just tell the board what the amount was and what you're amending it to.
So shortly, we've been there for a very long time. There was an existing license that was applied for from my understanding in 1974. I was 1 year old, so I do not remember that. So we have a license renewal every year. On one of our previous license renewals, we had a date of September in 2004 that allowed us flammable liquid storage up to 32,000 gallons. We basically just went by that license. We didn't actually have a physical copy of it. So when it came up for renewal this time around, we requested a copy of that license. It was subsequently found out that that was a clerical error, that was put on our license previously. It was just reissued with that same date. When we found out, working with Sharon George, the town clerk, that this was an error, we asked what we could do to ensure that we were in compliance. And this is what was recommended by her, is to go ahead, come to a public hearing and answer any questions and apply for a license for the appropriate amount.
Okay, and I see that you have your green cards with you. Before you leave, we'll ask you to bring
Yes, sir.
them up to the front. Any questions or comments from the audience, either for the board or through us to the deputy? Seeing none, hearing any questions, comments, or
May I?
motion?
Yeah.
Please do.
Given the recommendations of approval, I have no real concerns. I just, if I may, out of curiosity more than anything else, going forward now, we'll have annual reviews, and if there's an increase on an annual basis, you'll be before us or before this board.
Absolutely.
We'll just keep it current, so we won't have that sort of clerical snafu.
Now that we've been here and applied for the license, and we will apply for any amended quantities if we seek to up those.
And again, this is more a curiosity question. I have the curiosity, so I suspect maybe some of the residents do as well. These flammables, the rationale for the increase, is that market-driven in that you're performing more, you're selling more product, or doing more services with those materials?
So the majority of our liquids are actually combustible. It's diesel fuel. It's actually used to fuel our emergency generators on site. Obviously power outages, we work in a very sensitive business. We have, live product that we need to maintain for animal welfare purposes. So to comply with all laws and regulations surrounding that, we need a certain amount of diesel fuel on site to be able to run those emergency generators.
Okay, thank you very much for your answers.
You're welcome.
Anything else up front? Do we have a motion?
Given the information provided, I would move to approve the increase in flammables for Charles River Labs as presented.
Second.
Made and seconded. Anything further? All in favor? It's unanimous. You are all set. If you could please bring those green cards forward. Just one. Hey, Mike, I assume you want to have this tomorrow, so you want to sign a copy?
Yeah, you can come by.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next scheduled agenda item is for 7:15, and though we're a couple minutes early, it's not a public hearing, so there's no problem with proceeding. Is Mr. Quinn present? Hi, Mr. Quinn, if you could have a seat up here. And this appointment is with Adam Quinn, President, DJQ Donuts LLC, DBA Dunkin' Donuts, regarding a request to obtain a common victual license for property located at 66S Concord Street. Good evening, Mr. Quinn. Good, thanks. If you could summarize for the board and for the audience and the public what you're looking to accomplish.
Trying to put a Dunkin' Donuts, the corporate name will be DJQ Donuts, after my sister, on Concord Street, the Cummings property, and it's the end cap unit, which is 2 units over from where the Sandwich Exchange is now.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the board?
Yeah. Forgive me. So you just mentioned location. My questions aren't related specifically to the license, but again, similar to the previous questions, out of curiosity, since you're here, if you don't mind answering, I'm sure the audience would love to hear. Are you related to some of the other franchises in Wilmington? Is it the same company overall?
My family is, Mike Quinn is the franchisee, and I'm also a franchisee now. We have the stores on Lowell Street, the 3 stores on Lowell Street, and also the one on Middlesex Ave.
Okay.
So this will be our 5th one.
This will be 5th store, okay. Thank you. With regards to location, repeat it again for me, so I know where the Sandwich Exchange is. Left of that is Leahy, or it used to be a Leahy doctor office. I think they moved, or so you're going in what
Yes.
used to be the Leahy office?
Yep, the corner one closest to Concord Street.
Right, okay.
And they have a Leahy's clinical sign on the side of the building right there. So it's
Excellent.
actually S.
So I imagine you anticipate a lot of your clientele will be from the office area, office parks, and that community in that region. Will you have different hours because of that than some of the retail locations around town?
Well, it's funny you say that. The one thing I was going to ask the board to look at is actually restricting my hours. Dunkin' Corporate usually tries to push the hours later and later, usually to the boss of the franchisee. We usually have more theft and burglary issues later at night, so I was actually hoping that the board could restrict my hours from 5 a.m. to 9 p.m. I actually made the same request when we did our Middlesex Ave store, too.
I don't know what the mechanism is for that request. We'll take that as a separate question in a different in a moment. Hours, locations, signage. As it relates to, will you have signage more visible to highway traffic at all? Or I imagine you'll have that conversation with planning, et cetera, but what's your thought about that?
Talked to Carol Hamilton, and Carol's told me that the side that is perpendicular to Concord Street would be the front of the front for us.
Mm-hmm.
So that sign will be not a problem, but I plan on going in front of the board and asking for a second sign that's going to run parallel with Concord Street.
Yeah.
We're going to keep the 2 signs in the allowable area, but Carol was saying that because it's a secondary sign that I should bring it in front of the town. So as of right now, we're talking about the 1 sign that's perpendicular to, it's in the front of the building.
Facing Fordham Street.
Correct.
Okay.
And then a small pylon sign. Right now, they have Cummings Properties has a 4 quad thing, and one of them will be ours.
I see. Okay, thank you very much. I have no other questions.
Mr. Champu also, he had asked a lot of the questions that I do have. In these type of requests, there was some comments from Al Spalding as well. In these situations, can we issue this type of license contingent on those compliance issues being addressed? Would that be understood as part of this?
Yeah, certainly we could issue the license subject to a number of conditions. Many of those conditions, even if we neglected to do that, would still be enforceable through the zoning bylaw or the building code, or both. But certainly, things like the restrictions on the hours, that's something we should tackle as part of the motion.
Okay.
Anything else? Do we have the recommendations?
We do, and as Selectman O'Connell indicated, the Inspector of Buildings notes that this is an allowed use in the highway industrial zone, so that there are no zoning issues, but as of June 19th, they had not received an application for a building permit for a tenant fit-up, and before the space can be occupied, a building permit and certificate of occupancy must be issued. And then in a similar situation, the health director, Shelley Newhouse, recommends approval of the license subject to meeting all requirements of the Board of Health. So apparently, you've not gone through the Board of Health requirements yet.
Working with Shelley right now.
Okay. So I would recommend that if the board is so inclined to issue the common victual license, that in addition to including in the motion the restriction on hours, that it be made clear that it's subject to meeting all the conditions set by the Board of Health and the building inspector.
With that, do we have any questions, comments, or a motion?
I'll make the motion. We grant the request for a victor's license for Dunkin' Donuts at 66 S Concord Street with restrictions as outlined by the town manager with the Board of Health and Building Inspector, and the restriction of hours from 5 a.m. to 9 p.m.
We have a second?
Second.
Made and seconded. Anything further? All in favor? It's unanimous.
Good luck.
Thank you very much.
Good luck.
Good luck.
Have a good night. Our 7:20 agenda item is scheduled with Michael A. Kyra, Town Manager, Michael Morris, Town Accountant, and Pamela McKenzie, Treasurer Collector. It's regarding a review of the municipal bond rating and issuance of municipal bonds to finance the construction of the high school project. Good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With your permission, I would like to begin. As the board is aware, and we have some communications listed in on the Board of Selectmen's meeting agenda, I'm pleased to advise you that Standard & Poor's has assigned its AA+ long-term rating to the town's general obligation school bonds while affirming its AA+ rating on the town's previously issued bonds. The town's outlook was deemed to be stable. As you know, a AA+ rating is the second highest rating that can be issued. The official statement that was released by Standard & Poor's commented favorably on the town's financial position, citing numerous strong local economic indicators. According to Standard & Poor's, the rating reflects the town's following strengths: access to Boston and relatively low unemployment rate, strong to very strong income and extremely strong wealth indicators, very strong available fund balance at fiscal 2011 year end, and general fund surplus presented for 2012, as well as a low debt burden. The official statement further stated, and I'm quoting, "In our opinion, Wilmington's median household effective buying income is very strong at 159% of the national average. On a per capita basis, we consider its EBI, or effective buying income, to be strong at 123%. They also wrote that we consider the total available general fund balance of $12.3 million to be very strong at 15.1% of expenditures. I believe the rating validates the board's commitment to professional management and reflects the solid work performance of Wilmington's employees, the dedication of its many town officials, and the strong support of Wilmington's vast network of volunteers." You have before you as well the summary that was provided by Standard & Poor's that I just referenced, and they speak, I think, in very favorable terms about this issuance, but more specifically about the town's financial strength and financial condition. They do also indicate that there's a possibility for upward rating movement, which would depend on the same trend of financial stability, which they feel could happen over the next several years if the town continues to have the kind of economic expansion to further lend stability to the rating. And in fact, comments were made to that effect by officials from Standard & Poor's when discussing the town's rating with our representatives from Eastern Bank. They mentioned specifically that the town's economy points to a AAA community, and with consistent reserves and an improving general fund position, the credit could actually turn the corner into AAA territory at some point. So I think the board should be satisfied. I think the town should be satisfied with the rating and with the comments that we've received from Standard & Poor's. I've provided for the board, we just received today, of course we had already prepared in a preliminary basis, we received the package that is the final official statement relative to the sale of the general obligation bonds of $44,190,000 with the Standard & Poor's AA+ rating. And that's a rather large document that the town puts together with information, financial information on the town, various statements of fiduciary interest of the town, various revenue and expense statements, a discussion about the town in its entirety with financial information. This is something that's provided to the prospective bidders of the bond. Before I get specific with the issuance of municipal bonds that will finance the construction of the high school project, I didn't know if the board had any questions specific to the rating or the process for the rating. I can tell you that a great number of documents had to be prepared to send to Standard & Poor's. It culminated with a meeting, a conference call in my office with the Standard & Poor's representatives from New York, along with our Eastern Bank representative. Included in that meeting was the Assistant Town Manager, Jeff Hull, the Treasurer Collector, Pam McKenzie, the Town Accountant, Mike Morris, the Principal Assessor, Skip Moynihan, and myself, where for about an hour and a half or so we discussed the town's financial situation and talked about the many local economic indicators within the community. And as that's what they factored into finally writing a decision that rendered the AA+ rating. Okay.
I would just comment that, I think that the manager has summarized really the basis for that bond rating that I think many towns would envy. And one of the things that I think is important to point out is the emphasis that I see in Standard & Poor's summary relative to reserves and an intention by the town not to spend down the reserves, and the fact that the town hasn't gone for an operating override or debt exclusion. And so I think that all those things have been talked about in the past, and we'll continue to talk about them, but on top of what's been summarized, by maintaining reserves, we save the town money in the long haul. I think that's important for folks to recognize. Any other questions or comments from the board before we
I agree. I
move
agree
on?
what you just said. A lot of hard work has gone into this, and over the past many years, worked with Standard & Poor's, and once again, kudos to the town, the management, and everybody involved. Great job.
Mr. Chairman, the town received 7 bids on the bonds. As you know, we went out with a $44,190,000 general obligation school bond offering, and there were 7 bids received. The lowest of those bids was Guggenheim Securities, financial institution, at 3.28%. The bidding was very close, from 3.28 to 3.46, and obviously we went with the 3.28%, which includes a net interest cost of $19,193,000. The board has been asked, and they have signed a number of different documents to enable the issuance of the bond, but the ultimate decision has to be made tonight with regard to a motion that is required. I will tell you, in terms of the results of the sale, that we're generally pleased with the rate of 3.28. I did ask our advisors to compare what those rates would be, what the net interest cost would be if we were in a different AA category. For example, if the town was in a AA category, they would estimate that the rate would be about 3.35, and it would cost the town an additional $282,000 in interest cost. And if we were a AA minus, we would be at 3.43, and it would cost about $670,000 more in interest cost. It's a tricky business, and sometimes you hit it just right, and sometimes you don't. I think we hit it pretty close. We were estimating back some 7 months ago now that we would be at 3.2, and 3.28 is less than 1/10 of 1%, 0.08 of a percent difference, not even a full basis point. So I think the numbers will square out with what we had projected. I can give you an example. North Reading, just a few weeks ago, trying to come up with some comparables, sold $51 million in 25-year bonds. Now, we just sold $44 million in 25-year bonds. And they had a AA rating, and their resulting net interest, true interest cost, was 3.511, where ours, again, was 3.28. So, it turned out to be okay. Certainly, had we been a AAA community, it would have probably been, closer to 3 or 3.1%. But again, it is what it is, and we think it's pretty good. So if you have questions about that, we'd be happy to try to answer that, and certainly Pam and Mike are here to speak to that issue if you have any questions about what any of this means. It's kind of complex stuff, and we don't have all the answers, but we certainly can get it for you.
Anything from up here?
I think the comments have already been made. I did spend a significant amount of time reading the information. Everything has been very succinctly laid out, and the bottom line is that we are in the midst of a major, capital expense on behalf of the town, and I think certainly like to express appreciation to all of the various parties that have gone through the process, and really looking forward to moving forward with the project as planned. So thank you.
Yeah, I was going to ask about the bond rating process, or what it really meant. What it, we talk about this AA, AA plus, et cetera, and you've done a very good job through the years of redefining why that's important, especially as we collectively as a town discussed the potential for a new high school project and all of these things. It came up on a number of occasions where the town was in a good position to be able to pursue this type of an expenditure, that kind of a project, because of our financial position. But because of what you just said, I waited just a little bit because I knew we were going to come into where you were going to illustrate for the community the acceptance of the 3.28 from Guggenheim Securities. It's because of the AA plus, the very positive bond rating that we, the town, that the administration and all the hardworking people in the throughout the various departments, it's because of the work that they've been doing for a decade or more that we're able to appreciate these very favorable ratings. I mean, is that a reasonable statement? Is that accurate?
Well, I think the town's financial condition essentially speaks for itself. The reserves, the general fund balance is all very, very positive, and a lot of folks, as I indicated, including volunteers and town officials that work hard, is people who maintain their property. One of the things that was interesting, I thought, was the local economic indicators, where they were saying that the effective buying income was at 159%. That was a major change for the town, the median income levels. The demographics have become stronger. The reserve levels certainly have become stronger, but the demographics as well.
So it's the grand picture. It's not just the condition of the finances of the administration of the government.
It's not simply the town government. It's the town government and the community at large, which they look at in terms of economic strength. The business community, for example, how they're doing. Analog was cited as a strong representation of where the community is from a business point of view, and certainly the location is very strong. We've been consistent, the community, in having lower unemployment rates and increasing median income numbers.
Yeah, well, thank you. I could probably ask about 100 questions about the process of bond ratings and how bond ratings are different from mortgages and all that stuff, and I don't know how much detail you want to get into for the general population. I have a cursory, high-level understanding of it, having gone through the process, but I welcome any information. I suspect that the regular residents out there who aren't closely connected to and don't get this information coming across their desk might be interested in understanding what our process is, maybe from a 10,000-foot view. So I don't know if you're willing to talk to that or are able to.
Some of it, yes.
Okay.
It is a very complicated process.
Yeah.
We are allowed to, when we go to authorize the debt, bid the debt, we need to get a review from Standard & Poor's or Moody's, and we chose S&P. Most cities and towns in the past 2 years have been going to Standard & Poor's as well. They essentially ask for the booklet Mike showed shortly. They also want to see all kinds of other demographic statistics. They ask for copies of our audit. They ask for everything. They get a ton of documentation. They then rate the town after a review with us. One of the things I always found interesting is they theoretically are also working for the investor. They're basically putting their empanadas onto the statement saying we're a AA plus, and that tells a message to the person out there investing that you are a high quality investment. That to me was very important.
Yeah, indeed. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have no other questions, but thank you very much for the opportunity.
Anything else from up here? If you have any questions or comments from the audience that want to be directed to the manager or to the treasurer, collector, or accountant? Yes, Mr. McDonald.
Yes, we've got comment to Mr. Shampoo, a couple of questions for Mr. Morris. It might be in your best interest, Mr. Shampoo, to do a little research. I think you'll find out that Standard & Poor's rated Bear Stearns and Lehman Brothers good ratings before they went bankrupt. You might want to check that out. Mr. Morris, can you tell us if
If you could, Mr. McDonald, direct your questions to the board, and then if they're in order, we'll refer them to the appropriate people. Thanks.
Chairman Newhouse, if you would, ask Mr. Morris if he could tell us if there were any costs related to going out for a bond offering, and if Guggenheim Securities is a subsidiary of Eastern Bank or State Street Bank.
I could answer. There are issuance costs, sure. There are issuance costs, probably in the range of about $100,000, which gets melded into the rate. There's also a premium that comes to the town that's part of the bid package. In this case, $2.8 million. So when all is said and done, the town is receiving a total of $47 million on the 44.190 issuance. That calculates out to the true interest cost of the 3.28%. That 2.8 million ends up getting melded into our return. The Department of Revenue determines how that's to be done in compliance with IRS regulations, and that enables us to lower the rate. Guggenheim is not affiliated with Eastern Bank or with State Street Bank, and they go through a bid process, like everybody else. Eastern Bank, did not bid on this offering, nor will they receive, frankly, the monies. When we receive the monies, will not be deposited in Eastern Bank.
And I just have actually a letter from you, Mr. Morris, because I put in a public record request to find out who funded the middle school and the public safety building, and it was State Street Capital Markets. One of the things that's been disturbing to me is what I perceive as conflict of interest. And I have some documents I'd like to submit to the board tonight. The engineering company, Niche Engineering, that was hired to do the engineering for the high school. I find here that
Mr. McDonald, let me interrupt you there. I want to give you the benefit of the doubt. As much as this talk of conflicts of interest relative to the high school financing is something that we seem to have heard time and time again, since it's on, well, if you could let me finish. Since it's on the, since the issue of the municipal bonds is on the agenda, I certainly wanted to give you a chance to finish your question. But if you're now going to be talking about the firm that has done our wetlands research, we're not interested. We've been down that road. The work is done, and we're not interested. But thank you anyways.
well, I guess
Do you have any other issues you want to move on to? Or?
Yes. We know that the high school building project is being held up with appeals, and that was why I asked the previous question, and I think you might have misunderstood me. I understand that there are interest costs related to financing and bonds and that sort of thing, but right now, where the school is held up with an appeal or two appeals, are there costs right now, immediate, for the bond offering or anything related to that? For example, if the town has to pay any kind of origination fees or anything like that, it'll be nice to know that. And I'll just wait. You can answer that before I...
Yeah, the town is not required to pay Anything more because of the appeal and the origination fees, the town pays bond counsel, pays Eastern Bank, pays for the production of documents, the issuance cost, that's all the standard costs, but the appeal does not cost the town any money with regard to the bond authorization.
Well, what I find hard to understand is that you know that the school is being held up with an appeals. You're going forward with bond offerings and that sort of thing. There are payments probably to financial advisors, counsel fees. At the special town meeting, finance committee meeting, you mentioned that State Street Bank was a financial advisor. Then you mentioned that Eastern Bank is the financial advisor. We just want to get a clarification.
Ms. McDonald, first of all, on a number of occasions at which I've been present, the town manager acknowledged that on one instance, he may have said the word State Street Bank and misspoken. End of story. Eastern Bank is the financial advisor to the town relative to this project. So to continue to throw that out there is disingenuous. With respect to your question about proceeding with the project, certainly would let the manager or these professionals speak to some of the details about how the bond offering may or may not be affected. But as a selectman, I would say this: 75% of the electorate said move forward with this project. 98% of the people who attended the special town meeting said move forward with this project. While we indeed have 2 appeals pending, DEP is expected to issue a superseding order of conditions before the end of this month. Now, I strongly suspect that if the town didn't continue to move forward, you and I would think many, many other residents would take issue with the town for not proceeding in a manner that will enable us to move forward with the project. That's what we're doing. This project will become a reality. It is our hope and our expectation that the appeals that are currently pending are going to be resolved. But notwithstanding that, we're continuing with the business of the town and following the mandate that the voters gave to us.
Well, I actually don't really think my comments are disingenuous, Mr. Newhouse. I was at a high school building committee meeting the other night, which you were at also, and Wilmington Community Television wasn't there, so the community will not be able to be privileged to have the information that was given to us. And one of the bits of information that was given to us is that the architect stated that it's very conceivable that the oil is moving in the direction of the water flow. And you know, Mr. Carr knows that oil was recovered from an area that was already cleaned up.
Mr.
And
McDonald,
so
your comments are out of order. This evening's discussion and the agenda item that we're addressing right now is the municipal bond rating. You misstated what was conveyed to you at the high school building committee Thursday night, but that doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. That's not on the table. You can continue to pound away at this project to your heart's content, but we are going to stay in keeping with the agenda. Do you have any questions or comments regarding the municipal bond rating?
Yes. The last document that I have that I want to submit to the town is actually from a...
No, thank you. You can stay there. You'd be happy to deliver it to the manager, and we get copies of everything that's relevant.
Yeah, well,
Thank you.
this happens
is
to
that
be
it?
from a professional cost estimating firm, and I'd like to submit
Mr.
it to the
McDonald,
town.
what does that, we, the town
Because
of
I
Wilmington...
believe that the cost is tremendously overinflated.
Regardless of the cost, which you've said time and time and time again, at various public forums, this isn't the time to debate that. We're talking about the municipal bond rating and the true interest cost that the town will be paying for the project that's on the table and with which we are proceeding. So that's not on the agenda for tonight. So, thank you. Before we, are there any other comments from anybody up here? Okay. Before we entertain a motion, and I'm going to ask the manager, actually, I think it's better we read this one into the record, right? Before we do that, I did just want to share a comment that was conveyed to me by Mr. McCoy who I'd mentioned earlier this evening couldn't be here for a pre-planned procedure. And he asked that I convey his full agreement with the vote to be taken by the board and to approve the issuance of the notes and bonds relative to the school construction project. He also wanted to convey his congratulations to all the officials who worked diligently to ensure the affirmation of the town's bond rating at AA+. At that, if I could have the manager read in the proposed motion.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, would recommend that you adopt the following motion, that the Board of Selectmen determines in accordance with General Law, Chapter 70B, that the amount of the cost of the school construction project authorized by a vote of the town passed on December 10th, 2011 in Article 1 of the warrant, not being paid by the school facilities grant is $44,190,758. And you hereby approve of the issuance of notes and bonds in such amount under said General Law, Chapter 70B, and that further the sale of the $44,190,000 general obligation school bonds of the town dated June 28, 2012 to Guggenheim Securities LLC at the price of $47,160.30 and accrued interest, if any, is hereby approved and confirmed. The bonds shall be payable on March 15th of the years and in the principal amounts and bear interest at the respective rates as follows. Years 2013 to 2017, $1,775,000 at 4%. Year 2018, $1,775,000 at 5%. Year 2019, $1,770,000 at 5%. Year 2020, $1,765,000, 5%. Year 2021, $1,765,000 at 4%. Year 2022, $1,765,000 at 5%. Year 2023, year 2024, $1,765,000 at 5%. Year 2025 and 2026, $1,765,000 at 3%. Year 2027, $1,765,000 at 3%. Year 2028, $1,765,000 at 4%. Years 2030 and 2032 of $3,530,000 at 3.5%, and year 3037, $8,825,000 at 4%. And that further the bonds maturing on March 15th, 2030, March 15th, 2032, and March 15th, 2037 shall be subject to mandatory redemption or mature as follows. 2029, $1,765,000. 2030 is final maturity, $1,765,000. And the term bond due March 15th, 2032, for the year 2031 be in the amount of $1,765,000, and a final maturity in the year 2032 of $1,765,000. And that the term bond due March 15th, 2037, and the years 2033, 34, 35, 36, and 37, that being the final maturity year, be in the amounts of $1,765,000. And that further, in connection with the marketing and sale of the bonds, the preparation and distribution of a notice of sale and preliminary official statement dated June 12th, 2012, and a final official statement dated June 20th, 2012, each in such form as may be approved by the town treasurer, be and hereby are ratified, confirmed, approved, and adopted, and further, that the bonds shall be subject to redemption at the option of the town upon such terms and conditions as are set forth in the official statement, and further, that the town treasurer and the Board of Selectmen be and hereby are authorized to execute and deliver a continuing disclosure undertaking in compliance with SEC Rule 15C2-12, in such form as may be approved by bond counsel to the town, which undertaking shall be incorporated by reference in the bonds for the benefit of the holders of the bonds from time to time. And further, voted that we authorize and direct the town treasurer to establish post-issuance federal tax compliance procedures in such form as the town treasurer and bond counsel deem sufficient, or if such procedures are currently in place, to review and update said procedures in order to monitor and maintain the tax exempt status of the bonds. And further, that each member of the Board of Selectmen, the town clerk, and the town treasurer be and are hereby authorized to take any and all such actions and execute and deliver such certificates, receipts, or other documents as may be determined by them or any of them to be necessary or convenient to carry into effect the provisions of the foregoing votes.
Okay, do we have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
I'll second that motion.
Made and seconded. Anything further? All in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you. Communications? Yeah, Mr. Chairman, we've already reviewed the first two items relative to the bond rating and the summary from Standard & Poor's. We have a memorandum from Jeff Hull, the Assistant Town Manager, relative to the Town Manager Transition Plan. The correspondence serves to outline the steps that are being taken in anticipation of the transition, the Town Manager's retirement. And in fact, this was at the request of the board, and it is a memorandum prepared by Mr. Hull. He indicates that the job description for the Assistant Town Manager has been revised and been retitled Assistant Town Manager, Human Resource Director, and we've provided a copy of that job description for the board's review. Two professional municipal organizations to which Mr. Hull belongs have received notice. The town is seeking qualified candidates to fulfill the position of Assistant Town Manager. Notice has been provided to the Massachusetts Municipal Personnel Association and was in fact made available to attendees at the association's monthly meeting on June 21st. Notice is also being provided to the Massachusetts Municipal Managers Association with the expectation that the notice will be both on the website and made available to attendees at their July meeting. The position notice will be posted in Town Hall and on the town's website this week, and will be issued as well to the Massachusetts Municipal Association for posting in the Beacon for the summer issue, which is due to be published on July 19th. The expectation is that Mr. Hull and I would review letters of interest and resumes as that they are received, that a committee that would be comprised of the town manager and designated department heads, along with Mr. Hull, would conduct interviews from a short list of candidates that the committee would review and determine that to be in early to mid-August. Based upon input from the committee members, second interviews would be scheduled, and hopefully a preferred candidate would come forward early in September. Assuming again that the pool of qualified candidates is sufficient to draw upon an individual, and we believe it will be. We've already had a number of inquiries from qualified folks in municipal government across the state, that if this individual has the requisite mix of relevant experience, education, and training, then it would be possible to make a job offer sometime in September. And then depending upon the successful candidate's current employment circumstances, they would be required, obviously, to provide sufficient notice to their employer. We would expect that the position should be filled shortly thereafter, but certainly not later than the end of October. With regard to the specifics of the transition, during our monthly department heads meeting on June, I did announce the appointment of Mr. Hull as the next town manager, subject, of course, to a mutual agreement over the terms of a contract. Mr. Hull then advised department heads that he would be requesting a briefing document describing key issues that are related to their department, and that document would essentially serve as a jumping-off point for individual discussions with each department head. A follow-up notification on that same date was sent to department heads outlining the information that was requested, and it covered a number of different areas, including next steps related to major purchases or projects, status of any active litigation, an outline of critical situations, whether they be opportunities or problems that may be essentially in the works but have not yet reached a point at which action may be required, a discussion of personnel matters that would be affecting the department, key deadlines or events that are coming up over the balance of the calendar year, long-term issues that need to be addressed, which may include adoption or changes of policies or bylaws, compliance with legislative mandates or major capital investments, as well as to identify various priorities of the department head. The department heads have been asked to provide this briefing document by the end of June, and then Jeff has already begun scheduling meetings. He's received a number of these documents already, and it's his hope to be able to meet with all the department heads by the end of July. In addition, he and I have been meeting, and we will continue to meet to discuss various issues, as well as a meeting will be set up with town council to bring all up to date on the status of any ongoing litigation. The fiscal year 2013 budget also provides for funding of a part-time position. The full-time position has remained unfilled since October of 2009. And we have also had a part-time position that has remained unfilled. These vacancies have created a burden on the remaining personnel in the office. And over the next few weeks, we will be looking to, again, formulate a more current job description, at least for the part-time position, and advertise that the way all positions are advertised, both internally and on the town's local website and in local media, with the expectation that we will be filling that position. Mr. Hull indicates that the initial stages of the fiscal year 2014 budget preparation, beginning in September, makes filling these positions in a timely manner critical, and he, of course, is available at any time that the board would prefer to discuss with him any questions about the process. But I think that this outlines the transition that we had discussed, and we are moving ahead, and certainly would take any input from the board.
I would just also note to the board that it's my intention to meet in July to put together a contract with the new town manager. We should be able to do that with a full complement of the board in July.
The board has a copy of a letter from Robert Peterson regarding town-owned property at Faneuil Drive, map 44, parcels 166 and 167. The board may recall that this was surplus property that was determined to be surplus at a town meeting, and we in fact went out through the regular bid process for the disposition of property in accordance with Chapter 30B in the town's bylaws. The successful bidder of the property was Mr. Peterson. He is now notifying us that because of issues concerning property directly abutting the town property that he had hoped to purchase and was to be combined in order for him to create the lots, did not take place, and that he is now asking to, or indicating to us that he's withdrawing his bid. So the town now can, in fact, put the bid out again if it wants to, because the town meeting has authorized that. I take any recommendation from the board. Mr. Peterson did indicate his thanks to the members of town staff, including Mr. Moynihan and Ms. Hamilton, for all the assistance during the process, but he is not going to go forward. My recommendation at this time would be for the board to put this out again and to see if there's any other interest in the property. And if there's not, I think we could entertain other discussions with regard to the property, because we did declare it surplus. Could be, another use for it that we could discuss with the property review board, or we could take it back to the board of, to the town meeting with other recommendations.
Makes sense. Any objection to that?
None.
No.
Okay.
The board has copies of correspondence from Mass Housing, specifically Gregory Watson, the manager of comprehensive permit programs, regarding Metro at Wilmington Station. It's been commonly referred to as 10 Burlington Avenue, the former Sweetheart Plastic sites. The project is moving forward, as anybody who has driven by can see that they've been doing some site work, and this is a project that comes within the jurisdiction of Mass Housing through the comprehensive permit process, and they are providing the final approval letters to Metro and sending copies of those to the Board of Selectmen, the Board of Appeals, the Inspector of Buildings, and various representatives of DHCD. This just indicates that they're in compliance and they're going forward.
I said former sweethearts.
I'm sorry, former Diamond Crystal.
I don't want that getting
You're right.
thrown in your
Right.
face a year
That's
from
right.
now.
It's,
I didn't catch it.
my error. I want to correct it for the record right now. It's Diamond Crystal. Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Chairman.
you.
Can still smell the pepper. The board is being asked to consider accepting a drainage and access easement from Christopher M. and Kristen M. Collins on property located at 19 Fiorenza Drive. Back in 1992, the developer of Andover Heights conveyed several drainage easements to the town of Wilmington through its planning board in 2010. It came to the attention of the engineering division that Mr. Collins of 19 Fiorenza Drive encroached within the drainage easement adjacent to his home, and that this drainage structure was not working properly. So, we've gone through a process with regard to the drainage there, because it does house a stormwater detention pond, which mitigates runoff from a portion of Fiorenza Drive. And working with the homeowners, they have agreed to sign the attached easement document, which we did provide for the board. The easement is required for better access to what is a reshaped and now functioning detention pond that is adjacent to the house. The engineering division recommends that the town of Wilmington's board accept this additional drainage easement to gain better access to the stormwater detention pond for maintenance purposes in the future. So I'd ask the board to consider signing the drainage and access easement with Christopher M. Collins and Kristen M. Collins for property located on 19 Fiorenza Drive. This is met with the approval of council.
Questions, comments, or a motion?
Move to authorize the acceptance of the drainage easement at 19 Fiorenza Drive with Christopher Collins and Kristen Collins.
You have a
Second.
Made and seconded. Anything further? All in favor? It's unanimous.
Thank you. The board is being asked to consider approving town council's contract for fiscal year 2013. It is identical to last year's contract with the exception of the date change. There's no change in the amount on the contract. It continues to be based upon a monthly retainer, and it provides services for the town's governmental bodies, with the exception of the Wilmington Public Schools, to the extent that those services are within the scope and duties of the school committee, as they relate to school-related issues that are a part of town government, then they do, in fact, represent the town. It would provide advice on insurance issues and other such things.
Questions, comments, or a motion?
So moved. I'll make the motion to accept the contract.
I'll second.
Made and seconded. Anything further? All in favor? It's unanimous.
There are two places in which to sign, please. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, that concludes the regular business, although if you would indulge me, there is a request that came in today for a block party from Andrea Manala, hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, M-A-N-N-A-L-A, on Cardinal Court. Residents are planning on a party for Saturday, July 7th at 3 p.m. Within the cul-de-sac. Each family is planning to attend, and they wanted to request permission and to indicate to the board that they would be willing to make any special arrangements or comply with any conditions that the town requires. Town would have, town officials, town administration officials would have no objections as long as they meet any of the conditions that we normally put on these events.
Including consultation with the police department.
Yes.
Questions, comments, or a motion regarding the block party request?
Move to grant the request contingent upon the approval of public safety as just described.
I'll second that.
Made and seconded. Anything further? All in favor? Unanimous? Did you intend to have us do a second one of that, or that just gets stuck to these? That's the easement, it's not the original. Just got stuck to these two. Okay.
You only wanted one on the easement, right? That concludes the regular business before the board, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Public comments? Yes, Mr. Lingenfeld.
Not a comment, just had a question. I just wanted to confirm, if I could, Mr. Chairman, that the entire board got a copy of my response to the June 11th invitation for the meeting. Was my response letter shared with the entire board?
I believe so, it was, right? Yes.
And one in which I made a demand for Mr. Behrman's removal from the Board of Appeals. You did all get that?
We did all get that.
Confirm that, okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah, I mean,
That's
you know,
a good question. I didn't want to talk about it, I just wanted to make sure everybody got it.
well, yeah, but let's be fair. You go throwing out comments about demands for removal from the Board of Appeals, and I'm not just going to sit idly by and let that hang out there. The fact of the matter is that a resident who happens to serve as a volunteer member of the Board of Appeals made comments and took issue with a position that you've taken. I would look at the track record of that individual, and not for a minute would I consider doing that. And
That's fine, I just was asking, that's fine, no problem, thank you.
thank you.
I agree with the chairman, if I may, Mr. Chairman, on that. Just because a gentleman volunteers his time on a board or is on an elected position doesn't mean he forfeits his right to speak at a public meeting or vote the way he so chooses. And I don't understand why you would even ask us to remove him from, or anyone from a board for that matter, just because they don't agree with you on a certain issue.
It wasn't issue agreement, it was specific comments that were made.
I read the comments too, Mr. Lingenfeld, quite honestly, I still don't understand what you're talking about.
Comments too that weren't in the...
Okay, well, maybe I didn't see them all, but the ones I saw were public comments, if you will.
Anything else? Okay, anybody else? Yes, Ms. Sullivan.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I just was here tonight, I was gonna follow up, I don't know if the board was given some copies of the email that I had sent the town manager regarding the Rubin project.
Yes, thank you.
The board did get those. I just wanted to follow up a little bit, and I appreciate...
Clarify that you got the response.
Yep,
Okay.
yep, and I'm just to
And
follow up a
CC.
little bit on your response, which thank you very much for the response, and I was glad to see that the sign went back up on Rubin Street. So there was two reasons I wanted to come here tonight, and that was maybe to get the public aware of what's going on, because I guess a lot of residents in the area just don't know about this project in Woburn, where they're planning to remove the ledge right on the Wilmington Woburn line. And it is over 400,000 cubic yards of material. It was, I guess, 200,000 cubic yards of ledge, but there's an additional 200,000 cubic yards of glacial till, soil, and other materials. So the project has been changing a little bit, but I've been really pretty much the only Wilmington resident there. So I'd like to encourage other people to come to the next meeting. It's July 18th at the Woburn City Hall. And I was wondering if the board would follow up. I know, Mr. Carver, you said that you had some communication with the mayor, but I was wondering if the board would follow up with a letter to the chairman of the ZBA, and just to make sure that it's part of the public record, to be entered maybe into the public record at the next ZBA meeting, that the Woburn Street has a truck restriction on it in that area, where they were proposing at the meeting to take all the trucks, which would be at least about 32,000 truck trips for 18-wheelers, and their proposal is to bring them down Woburn Street. And as we all know, they're supposed to do a MEPA filing, an environmental impact report, and once we get to that stage, it's you know, the town may have to weigh in again. So I'm thinking that if the town weighs in at the beginning of the process, maybe the town won't have to weigh in so much when they do the environmental impact report, because they have to do one. But you know, they have some problems going south, and probably most likely if they want to take the right-hand turn to Woburn Street to Presidential and go out that way, they're not going to make that swing with 18-wheelers full of material. So they pretty much only have two other options, and that's Woburn Street to take the left on the residential road, or Route 38. And I don't know if there's a weight restriction on Ames Street or not. I've heard that there is, but I couldn't say 100% for sure.
The bridge.
On the bridge. So,
Yeah, off the top of my head at least, I don't know about the weight restriction on Eames Street. We'll look into that. In terms of the truck exclusion on the portion of Woburn Street from Eames Street to Lowell Street, as you had just pointed out, that sign has indeed been reinstalled, and the town has every intention of enforcing that restriction. We had anticipated that we would go through the formal comment process through, you know, at the time of the MEPA comment period. But certainly, the administration, through the manager and the planning director, has and will continue to be in communication with the town, and we'll do everything we can to be in communication with the developer as well. And with regard to your comment about the Board of Appeals, we'll make sure we get something in the record there.
that would be great, because at the next meeting, the 18th, when I go there, I'd really like to be able to have that for a little backup, because I could use some backup there. You know, because I've been the only one there, and it's a really, it could have a huge impact on Wilmington residents, besides the impact that it's going to have on Woburn residents if it does happen. But, you know, Wilmington could be impacted. There's residents in Wilmington that are not too far from, like the Big Woods, for instance, are not that far from this project. They're like on the other side of the hill.
Right.
I mean, we have concerns about the Olin site, but the EPA did weigh in, as you probably, maybe some of you saw. So they did have some good conditions, but there's still some concerns because it wasn't really a comprehensive review, and it's a wild card.
Well, yeah, I'm glad you raised that point. I didn't think to mention that the town's own consultants obviously are working to review the EPA comments as well. So, point well made. I don't know if there's anything else, Mike, that you want to add that we continue to do on that. But.
No, well, I guess only that with regard to the route, we have been talking, as I indicated, both with the mayor and with the with TEC, who are doing the traffic, and they indicated today that they are submitting a new plan, which is being submitted, they believe, by Wednesday, which would designate Commerce Way as the route. So that's certainly a good, good thing for the town, obviously, as you're indicating. So if they go in that direction, we also know, and they've noted, and we've noted to them, that the bridge that goes over 93 has a state truck exclusion, a state truck limit on weight. That is but it's heading north. South it doesn't, but heading north it does. So they're, rethinking this whole route issue. And what,
They head north, I hear to Hefflons. I mean, that's what rumor has it. I don't know if that's true or not, but
we
that's what.
talked to them, and I guess it's Onyx that is doing that, and they have facilities in a number of different locations, from what I understand. And so my expectation is that it would depend upon the closest location to which they have a buyer as to what route they would go, whether they would want to get right on 93 or get right on 95. So obviously the preferred route would be to go 38 into Woburn, and we would much prefer them to do that. But we can understand that with a school there and other issues. But we obviously, as the chairman has indicated, will vigorously protect the town's interest on Woburn Street, and we just won't allow them to go down there. The chief is aware of that. And the only other thing that there seems to be a little bit of conflict on, and be happy to get any input from you even offline, but with regard to the 400,000 tons, the information that that we have, based upon the Housing Appeal Committee decision, which was made, I think, back in 2006, was that it was going to be 120,000 cubic yards of both rock and soil. And the only modification request that we've seen on the record is a 25% modification request. And that would bring it to 150,000 cubic yards. So I'm not sure, there may be intelligence out there that's saying 400,000 square yards, but we haven't seen that in a filing yet.
We'll have to get that to you. They actually, I guess they hired, I think it was Onyx actually, if you speak to Onyx, I think they're the ones that did it. They had a gentleman there that was talking about it. He said that those figures are actually wrong, and they were wrong in 2006, and they didn't, in the original amounts that they're going to take out, now they're doubling the amount that they're going to take out in 2006. And their figures were wrong, and now they're estimating that it's going to be around 500,000 cubic yards. That's the total that they cited at the meeting, which comes to approximately 16,000 truckloads. But there's another caveat there, because it all depends on whether or not they process it on site or if they take it off site to process it. Because if they take it off site and they're not allowed to process the rock on site, that number of trucks actually increases, because you can't fill the trucks up as much. So it's still not even clear now, I guess, after all these meetings, exactly how many trucks there actually will be, because that's a huge issue there, how they're going to process it, because the residents don't want to process on site, so that number could actually increase. So that's what they're saying, 400,000 cubic yards. I mean, that's huge. So, but you can, I can try to get that material. I got a document that it's in, so I can send it to you.
That'd be helpful.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, sir, in the back.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and board members. My name is Michael Fionda. I'm one of the abutters of this project. My family owns 1022, 1024, 1026, 1028, and 1030. So I got the most to lose out of this whole project. And you were kind of right on the first project. Was 80,000 cubic yards of ledge, 40,000 soil. That's what the state permitted for in 2006, which considered one building, 6.5 stories. The new amendments that's in front of the board now is 4 different buildings spread out through the 9 acres, and they're going to remove almost 418,000 cubic yards of material now. So it's all drastically changed. Originally, they were going to only remove 25 feet of the mountain. Now they're removing 70 feet of the mountain. And approximately, we estimated the money that would go into Dolben, who's doing the project, $6.2 million before the building even gets put up. Just getting rid of the ledge, just selling off the ledge. They want to crush it on site, sell it as 1/2 and 3/4 ton stone to the sites local. That's what Ox Trans is going to do it. And Ox Trans major plan is in Acton, Mass. And he has no intention of pulling it back to his site. It's too much of a cost with fuel and everything. He's going to sell to the closest bidder that's nearby. I have all the information. I would recommend if the board would put some time, go on the City of Woburn Board of Appeals website. Me and my brother have posted up a whole documentary, and all the information's on that website about what they plan on doing now and the changes to that original permit. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. McDonald.
I have some comments other than these ones right here, but since they just brought up that project in Woburn, the town of Wilmington has some large projects coming up where they need crushed stone. It might be in the best interest of the community to talk to the developer and talk to the site contractor, because we have a facility practically butting that facility, which is our recycling yard. And there is the possibility where we're in a bad economy when a project like that, which needs to get built, would have a very difficult time selling that material in this down economy. And there's a high likelihood that we could get that ledge for free, stockpile it in our recycling yard, and crush it ourselves for our own crushed stone needs. So just throwing that out to you.
On that point, actually, the manager and I mentioned today that I should say, I asked the manager about that, and we think that's a long shot, but something we're going to look into nonetheless. So we're going to take a look at all aspects on that.
So you weren't familiar with that before Suzanne mentioned it, but now you're telling me that you talked to the
What do you
manager
mean I
about it
wasn't
today.
familiar with it? No, to the contrary. We've been familiar with this project, and I don't profess to know all aspects of the project, but we've been familiar with the project, and the town has been involved in communicating with the city of Woburn and had attempted to communicate with the developer, and as you heard the manager indicate, had gotten in touch with folks today from the private sector on that. So, yes.
The other comments I have, the people in Wilmington on their cable bills are charged a fee. It's a PEG fee, and that is for local community television access. Everybody in town that has that pays that fee, but yet when we go to a community building committee meeting, we don't see Wilmington Community Television there. And when I make comments tonight that are called disingenuous, and I know for fact that the architect stated that it's conceivable that the oil is moving in the direction of the water.
Ms. McDonald, let
And
me
the
just
community
back
doesn't
up.
have the opportunity to
me.
have the community television there when they're paying a fee, I think is inappropriate. And
Just to take a step back, Mr. McDonald, there's
I don't
two
interrupt
parts.
you, Mr. Newhouse.
Well,
You
but
understand that?
yeah,
You do
but
understand that, right?
But one of the things, Mr. McDonald, when I sit in this chair, for better or for worse, I have to maintain order in the meeting, and sometimes that requires me to interrupt people, which I try to do respectfully, and I try to explain why I'm interrupting. The reason why I'm interrupting you at this point is because I don't imagine how it could have come across this way to anybody, but I just want to be very clear. When you start questioning the town's relationship with State Street Bank, that is specifically what I'm referring to as being disingenuous, because it's been explained to you on a number of occasions that that was a slip of the tongue, and that just keeps coming up over and over and over again. And that point has been made to you repeatedly.
So
Now,
just
with
to get
respect
that
to the
clear,
with
just before you go on, just to get that clear.
Yes.
Mr. Kara, the town has never spent any money or paid any money to State Street Bank as their financial advisor.
No, back in the middle school project in 2000, 2001, whatever the bonding was, we used State Street Bank. I can't get in that guy's head, but I strongly suspect that's how State Street Bank come out of his mouth in answer to your question 6 months ago, which has been reiterated a number of times since then.
So we could put a public record request into the account to see what kind of money was paid to the financial advisor, State Street Bank?
You can knock yourself out with public records requests. Make as many as you want.
Yeah, I actually made a public records request to the superintendent of schools, but I've never got a response yet. Maybe the board would
Which
tonight...
request is that referring to?
Well, we'd like to know the names of the contractors that returned bids for the site work for the high school.
May I, Mr. Chairman?
Please.
You were told at the meeting that you attended on Thursday, the high school building committee meeting, that an answer to your public records request was mailed to you. and that was stated at that time. You made a request on June 15th, and a letter was sent by certified mail to 140 Andover Street. I believe that's your house, or your mother's house, I think, where you live. And a letter by certified mail was sent there, and we have the tracking notice that indicates that the United States Postal Service attempted to deliver that on Thursday, June 21st, and they left a note at that address. And I have the tracking service.
Well, I tell you what, why don't I come down tomorrow and I'll pick it up off your desk. You could give me a copy of that. And maybe for the benefit of the community tonight.
Give you a copy of what? The letter or the tracking
My
address?
request was to get the names of the companies that have responded with the proposal
We'll give you
for
a
the
copy
sidewalk.
of the response that we
It's a
gave to
simple
you.
question, Mr.
If you don't get mail at your address, or you don't pay attention to certified letters.
Or if I don't get home and the post office closes, that sort of thing.
Oh, so perhaps you did
so-
get the
Excuse
mail.
me?
Apparently you did.
Well, what I'm trying to ask you, Mr. Kara, for the
Did you get it,
benefit-
Mr. McDonald? Did you get a notice from the post office?
I'll have to go through my records, Mr. Kara.
Oh,
and see
okay.
that.
You
Mr.
don't
Kara,
remember whether you got it?
Mr. Kara, would you like to tell the community the list of contractors that have replied back for site work for the high school project?
No.
I know it hasn't been awarded yet, but you don't want to share that with the
No,
community.
I don't want to waste this. I don't want to waste this meeting's time.
Oh, that's a waste of time, huh?
Yes.
Okay.
This whole thing's a waste of time. Mr. Chairman, can we move on past the buffoonery and have a substantive conversation about something that means something? We were talking about the issue that Ms. Sullivan brought to brought to the town's attention that we had been dealing with over the course of the last several months. And that was valuable information. We had a good conversation about the tonnage of material that a Woburn project will potentially be having to move. I thought that was valuable information for the community, for the residents to be privy to. We talked about a route that would take that material out to Route 93 without infringing upon or going through residential neighborhoods in Wilmington. I thought that was a positive generally for the town of Wilmington. Regrettably, this is a Woburn project, so we don't have a lot of jurisdiction over how much material or the permitting of the project, but we will stay close to the project. That was the information that I wanted this board to get out to the public before the meeting was, again, sabotaged and hijacked by buffoonery. So with all due respect to your position as the chair, could we I'd like to see if we could stay on what the subjects of our meeting is and not have the meeting hijacked again. Thank you. I'm sorry to burst in.
Mr. McDonald, do you have any other public comments that we haven't covered already in either tonight or some other?
Yeah, I
public
mean,
session?
just getting back to that oil flow movement.
Yeah, we've been.
You don't want to share that with
that's
the
been
public
asked-
either, Mr.
No,
Newhouse?
it's been asked and answered a number of times. We've been through it, so that's out of order. Anything that we haven't covered
The
several times
last thing
over.
was, Analog was here at the last Board of Selectmen meeting, and just, are you aware of anything as to whether or not they might have any interest in the Olin site?
I'm not aware personally of any interest in the Olin site. With respect to Analog's visit the last time, the assessor and the planning director have requested some information from Analog, and we await their response. Anything else that we haven't covered yet? Okay.
No, I think
Do we
that's
have?
fine, Mr. House.
We'll move on to new business and committee reports. Anything down here?
No committee reports, and I make just a couple of comments briefly
Sure.
here. I just wanted to convey good wishes of good health to Mr. McCoy. Obviously, his absence here tonight is because he's undergoing some health-related things, so we hope that he fares well. And this will be, I believe, if I look at my calendar correctly, our last meeting here today before the 4th of July celebrations. So I want to wish you all a happy and safe Independence Day celebration. And to the community, represent us well, as you always do every year. You as residents, come out and celebrate positively in a peaceful manner, really just exemplifying what community is all about. So I hope that we can enjoy each other's company and enjoy a fun 4th of July celebration. I look forward to seeing you out there. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Anything else?
Just want to extend well wishes to Selectman McCoy, and I have nothing further. Thank you.
I too would like to extend well wishes to Selectman McCoy. Also, I'd like to make a comment about something that was brought up here tonight about a gentleman that sent a letter to us about removing somebody from a board, the Board of Appeals, which is appointed by the Board of Selectmen. The letter we received, we did all receive, and we did all read it. I have been told up here that it's all about freedom of speech. We have freedom of speech. Mr. Body, you even said to me one time as a veteran, I should know more. It should be more to me than freedom of speech. So I don't understand why a gentleman that volunteers his time on a board, is an elected official on this, at any board, any elected position in town, can't have an opinion, can't vote the way he wants to vote, whether it's publicly or in a ballot box, can't move to question on a question just because he's either an elected official or a appointed official or just a volunteer for any other board. So I would just like that point across to the audience out there, I guess, is that's freedom of speech, and that's the way it works. And just because somebody doesn't agree with somebody, there's no reason to call for their resignation off a board. And that really bothered me that was brought up tonight, using the gentleman's name, and just because he's a volunteer in this town. So that's freedom of speech. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
There's, Mr. McDonald, enough. Thank you. No, I wouldn't like to answer anything because we give you more time than anybody ever asks for. It's out of order. It's out of order. Please refrain from continuing to address the board at this
I don't
time.
think I attacked anybody.
Please refrain.
I'm just saying what the way I feel about it.
Mr. McDonald, that's enough. Thank you. We have, if,
I
you know what,
didn't
you know,
mention anybody by name. I didn't.
hey, if you want to respond, what I find amazing to me, Mr. Lingenfelter, and I'll give you the floor if you want, but you sit here and you come to every meeting and you make your public comments, you go to town meeting, people make motions when they want to make them, and nearly 1,500 people vote in favor of that motion. An individual shows up to this meeting once and expresses an opinion, and you're all over him. It is, so I'm sitting here saying, you know, Mr. Semaglia has said his piece. You know, I think it's loud and clear on where he's coming from. I don't want anybody to make any mistake where I'm coming from. This really is not the appropriate forum to take action on these things, but, you know, you threw it out there. If you want to make a comment, by all means, go ahead, Mr. Lingenfelter.
It had to do with the negative and the aggressive connotations of the comments from that specific individual. And I tried to express that.
Before, at the meeting.
I think you're interrupting him now. I think you're interrupting him now, Mr. Semaglia.
Mr. McDonald, if you inject yourself into this discussion again, I'm going to ask to have you removed. Mr. Lingenfelter, the
That was
floor
my
is
comment. It
yours.
had to do specifically, it did pertain to that meeting, but it also pertains to the specific comments that were posted online as to the aggressive and I'll just leave it at that, the aggressive and the negative connotations of those comments.
We can agree to disagree on how you feel about a certain comment. You've also, this gentleman came to a meeting and you stood right up and berated him. A couple of yous did for voicing. Well, he voiced his opinion at a public meeting.
And he actually was the one that was aggressive. Instead of calling me gutless and making negative comments, and no one from the board said anything about it.
Yeah,
I was just standing there. There's no point talking about it.
That's the end.
I think that the point has already been made, and if I may, is that, you know, it sounds to me like, unfortunately, your feelings were hurt by it. You know, no, but the thing is, Mr. Lingenfelter, the fact of the matter is that if someone has a differing opinion, I mean, you take out an ad about every member of the Board of Selectmen and call us ignorant and tell us that we, excuse me? No, so, but see, the thing is, no, you say that we're ignorant and we should be embarrassed.
Yes.
Ignorant implies that we don't know anything or that we're potentially rude. Not once in any specific forum, whether it's in this meeting or outside of this meeting, have you once even acknowledged that I'm a living human being that's walked by you. You've never spoken to me. You've never even so much as introduced yourself and asked a question, personally or professionally. So do not claim to know what I feel about anything, whether it's intelligence about a given town matter or what I think about a given resident of the town, because you've never, ever asked me.
You've made a lot of
Fact
public
or
comments, though.
fact or fiction?
You've made a lot of
True
public
or
comments.
false? Just answer the question. Have you ever even acknowledged?
I think I may have acknowledged you in passing, but I'm not sure. I admit that.
Okay, so I'm just saying, the point is that you want to be heard and you'll take out ads when someone wants to be heard and you don't like what they have to say. Now you take issue. I have not moved for grounds for you to be removed as a resident of any meeting because I don't like the fact of what you've said about me or claim to know about me.
I wasn't speaking in a negative connotation, though. It was a professional comment, and I...
Your request
it
has
was
been heard,
specifically
and
to-
it's been denied by me, it's been denied by these members. I can't speak to the gentleman of my left. So yes, it has been heard, your request has been made, and I'm denying it from my capacity. They've denied it.
I just asked.
You can speak for yourself.
And I would think,
End of story.
that's protest too much. So I'll make a comment on that.
Mr.
done.
Chairman? Mr. Chairman? Mr. Newhouse?
I have,
Excuse me.
you're out of order, Mr. McDonald.
I just want to ask you a question.
The floor is not yours. We have here, and I wanted to bring to the public's attention, a memorandum that we received today from council. I would characterize the memorandum as notification that the Surface Transportation Board recently decided to further delay action on New England Transrail's petition for authorization to construct and operate the waste transloading elements of its proposed facility at 53 Eames Street until such time as the US EPA issues a record of decision and a remedial investigation feasibility study for the cleanup of the Olin Superfund site. So, in essence, this is good news in that the town is assured that the status quo will be preserved until such time as the environmental issues are addressed to the satisfaction of EPA. And this decision, specifically the STB, had cited the renewed objections from the EPA and the town of Wilmington. So that's good news for the town. Before moving to important dates, I also wanted to acknowledge Mr. Smaglia and to congratulate local heroes for your recent recognition from the New England Patriots Organization and Mr. Kraft. For folks who are not aware of it, this local nonprofit organization received a $25,000 grant from the Patriots Organization in memory of Myra Kraft, and that was what I would characterize as the blue ribbon in this year's first annual event where they make those contributions to nonprofits. So job well done to local heroes, and wanted to acknowledge that.
Thank you. Can I just say on that, and I said when I received that award, I firmly believe that the town of Wilmington has supported local heroes 100%. The hundreds of volunteers, or dare I say thousands of volunteers that have come down on Wednesday nights, the monetary donations, the goods donations over the past almost 8 years reflects highly on the town of Wilmington, and especially all the volunteers that come down, and more importantly, the men and women serving overseas that are the beneficiaries of these little thank you boxes to help get through their day. But thank you.
What dates?
Mr. Chairman, just to let folks know, remind them that Sundays through September 30th, with the exception of July 1st, the farmers market is open by the town common from 10:30 to 1:30 p.m. Fun on the 4th begins on June 29th, the 4th of July festivities. The annual festivities begin on that night, and they go through July 3rd. On June 30th is the Family Day and Family Day fireworks. That's Saturday. And on Tuesday, July 3rd, the spectacular fireworks. I should say Tuesday, July 3rd, the spectacular fireworks will be at the town common. For those of you who are interested in information on that, we really encourage you to call the 4th of July committee. Their number is 978-657-8081, or you can go online at funonthefourth.com. On July 8th, the Harnden Tavern will have an open house from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. The concerts on the Common that are sponsored by the Recreation Department begin on, the first one being July 11th, with the Don Campbell Trio from 6:30 to 8 p.m. And remind folks that there is brush drop-off off Old Main Street on July 11th, and then again on July 14th. July 11th is a Wednesday from 8 to 2 p.m., and July 14th is from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. We will have brush drop-offs in July, August, and September. This is the brush drop-off date for July. The board's next meeting is July 16th, and there will be another concert on the Common that following Wednesday.
Okay, do we have, Mr. McDonald, please exit the room. Please exit the room. You've been sir, please,
I'll give it to the police officer to get.
I don't care who you give it to, sir.
This is the
I asked you
document
not
I
to
wanted to
approach
submit
the
you.
table.
You go, sir. You can give that to them after we.
We have a motion to adjourn to executive session for the purpose of discussing collective bargaining issues.
So moved.
Second.
Made and seconded. We'll take a roll call vote.
Yes.
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 Chairman votes yes. 4 in favor. None opposed.